What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Drew Code Sports Talk. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for a brand new episode. I am your host, Cody Johnson. I'm flying solo today, which no worries. I got you guys covered. We got a full episode packed with a ton of stuff from the NFL, NBA. I don't really have any baseball stuff yet, but stay tuned. Who knows? I'm watching actually the Giants game right now. They're in San Francisco right now playing the Diamondbacks, and I've got it going right now as I am recording right now, and the Giants are in the lead. So there's your baseball segment. So anyways, if you guys are watching right now on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Like and share would be much appreciated. Trying to get this thing to 500, and we're knocking on the door of it. We're about 430, I think, is the number. So really would appreciate you guys' support and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Also, if you guys are listening to us on the audio side, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, would love to get love for you guys to subscribe there and also follow us on those channels, as well as this is also available on audio only if you can't watch it on YouTube. And the most important one, social media. We're active all over there, from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Pretty much you name it, we're there. We just crossed 1,000 followers on Instagram just the other day. So thank you to everyone that made that possible. And hopefully we can grow it another 1,000 and then maybe 10,000 and hopefully more. But, you know, for the most part, it's been a slow rise for Drew and I, and really appreciate everyone's love and support and just hanging out and following the journey. Very much appreciated. And also cannot be remiss to thank also the other podcasters that I've befriended, that Drew and I have befriended on this journey here. Really appreciate you guys. And, you know, not only the collabs, but the ones that we've interacted with behind the scenes. Really appreciate the community that you guys have made us feel like we are a part of. And yeah, I think that's all the pleasantries I have to get out of the way. If you guys did not see last week's episode, it's because it was streamed on our channel. I was a part of the AFC West roundtable with the Shovik Sports, their brothers, Corey and Austin. Also had Matt from Orange Crush News 365 was on there as well. And also Tim Collins for Answer the Call. I was a guest on his podcast as well as the Shovik brothers as well. So we did a roundtable. If you guys have not seen that, go ahead and go check it out right now. It was a lot of fun. I think it was like a 2-hour show, but a lot of great diving in content in terms of like AFC West and teams we think are going to, you know, challenge the Chiefs, and grading all of the drafts that our teams respectively had. So it was a ton of fun. We're going to be doing a lot more of that stuff throughout the NFL season. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, there's just a lot going on behind the scenes. I'll be hosting. I'll be a guest on the Three Guys, Six Balls podcast as well. That I think I'm supposed to meet up with them on Monday. I don't know when their episode will come out, but when it does, I will let you guys know. So that way you guys can hang out with me on there as well. So, man, I think I got enough of the housekeeping stuff out of the way. So let's get diving into the show. And of course, I've got to lead off with the most important one. And this is no tongue in cheek. There's no jokes about it on this one, but Derek Carr has retired from the NFL after 11 seasons and playing the NFL. Of course, for those that have been following Drew and I on this channel, we are diehard Raider fans. We're also Fresno State Bulldog fans. We have essentially watched all of Derek Carr's career from the time he was at Fresno State, also his entirety of being as an Oakland or Las Vegas Raider, before, of course, the unfortunate Raider divorce that he had, because I would blame it on the McDaniels and Dave Ziegler regime that ultimately turned out to be what set Derek Carr out of the organization, and he ended up signing with New Orleans. But Derek Carr has called it a career. It was definitely an interesting offseason for him, because he came out with he didn't finish last year because of an injury. I guess that shoulder injury was a lot worse than it was led on to believe. And, you know, the Saints were basically recouped or kept Derek Carr's player option, but Derek Carr decided to retire because he did not want to do shoulder surgery and be out in rehab. So he decided to just call it a career after 11 seasons, which kudos to Derek Carr. He's had a hell of a career. Career 65% completion percentage, 257 total touchdowns, only 112 interceptions. threw for over 41,000 passing yards, is a career 92.8 passer rating. Most notably for the Raiders, though, he was the quarterback for us for the last 9 seasons. We drafted him in the second round of the 2014 draft. He actually was a starter right away in his rookie year, and he threw for 21 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Obviously as a rookie was learning the ropes and then has progressed ever since then. A lot of people like to look at the Vegas, or at least Oakland Raiders' success in 2016 as one of Derek Carr's best seasons. And I can see why. He threw for just a shade under 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But ironically enough, his second year in 2015 was technically better because he threw for 32 touchdowns on that one. But I would even argue that Derek Carr's best seasons with the Raiders, didn't even start there. As everyone knows, he was injured in 2016, which kind of prevented the Raiders from making a deep playoff run. I think it was like week 14, of the NFL season when he broke his leg or his foot during a game against the Indianapolis Colts. He was out then for the rest of the season, came back, or season and playoffs. He came back at the start of the regular season of the new year. Looked a little shaky, but bounced back. And then in 2019 or 2018, 19, 20, and 21, Derek Carr had 4 consecutive 4,000 passing yard seasons. And right now, Derek Carr is the Raiders' all-time passing leader, touchdowns, and I believe completion percentage, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So Derek Carr, he is obviously had his jersey retired at Fresno State. Will he get his jersey retired at the Raiders? I don't know, because he didn't win a playoff game. He didn't take us to the Super Bowl. It's kind of hard to say. I did want to pose a question, though, as if Derek Carr is a Hall of Famer. I'm asking this as, again, like a genuine Raider fan. As I said at the top of the show, Drew and I are Fresno State fans who saw the magic between Derek Carr and Devontae Adams when they were at Fresno State, and that was a beautiful thing to see. So we definitely believe in Derek Carr and his passing ability and his leadership ability on the NFL level. But of course, it just didn't translate into playoff wins. I think the only other playoff appearance that he had, well, he only had one playoff appearance that I'm aware of, and that was in 2021. That was the year where we essentially eliminated the Chargers in the last week of the season. We got to play the Cincinnati Bengals, where we lost to them I think it was by 1 score, and the Bengals that season went on to go to the Super Bowl but lose to the Rams. So that was the closest that the Raiders have gotten to any postseason success with Derek Carr as a starting quarterback. It's a shame. I wish we would have had more playoff appearances, but with Derek Carr, he also went through a lot of head coaches. Not his fault, more or less. It was ownership, management. They went through a lot of regime changes. So Derek can only do so much, but in that 9 years that he was with the Raiders, he did, a hell of a job, and it's good on him. But, again, the question I want to pose is Derek Carr a Hall of Famer? And I think this one's tough because sentimentally, I want to say, yes, he's a Hall of Famer, with the yards and the touchdowns. He does rank somewhere within the top. I think it's 25 or 30 all time in terms of like statistics, but, can that translate into playoff wins? Can that be overlooked without a championship? Even Dan Marino had some playoff appearances. I think Dan Marino went to 1 or 2 Super Bowls, but again, Derek Carr never really came close other than a wild card game against the Bengals that I mentioned. So, I think what's tough about this is Derek Carr will probably be like a Ring of Honor member for the Raiders because he is the all-time leader in a bunch of quarterback statistics for the Raiders. But in terms of like a Hall of Fame quarterback, I think it's because he's a fringe player. Like Raider fans will know, or at least ones that, were Derek Carr fans as well, will know that Derek Carr to us made a difference. He was a constant for, 9 seasons. It's more than what we could say about what we've had for head coaches and all that stuff. So, as much as I want Derek Carr to be a Hall of Famer, probably not, just because, again, statistically, he's a fringe without all that playoff success, maybe not. And I even saw this on the it's this Instagram page that we are friends with. It's the Give It a Shot network. fun shows such as Stuff About Sports. They posed a great question if he is. I commented on it and I said essentially the same thing I'm saying here is, no playoff appearances or one playoff appearance and a playoff loss, no Super Bowls. Statistically, he's good, but he's a fringe ultimately. And then somebody else commented beyond that, and I can't remember what, but then, the Stuff About Sports folks, they came around and said, well, if that's the case, then Calvin Johnson should be disqualified because he never went to the playoffs, and yet we recognize him as an all-time, statistically speaking. So I think that's a good point, but I would think that if Derek Carr did get in the Hall of Fame, it would be many, many years down the line. More likely, he'll probably be like a Ring of Honor member for the Raiders or, Ring of Shield member or whatever the case may be for the Raiders. But I don't know of Hall of Fame. But, again, as Drew and I are Fresno State fans, of course, Raider fans, we are huge Derek Carr fans and huge supporters of him. Even when he went to New Orleans, we were very excited for him for that opportunity and just, wish he, I think a lot of things in question as to why there wasn't more success, maybe coaching, maybe injuries, whatever the case may be, but wish that Derek Carr would have gone out in a little bit better circumstance during his time with New Orleans Saints and also with the Raiders. Because again, big Raider fans would have loved to have Derek Carr for the remainder of his career. But, again, now that he'll probably be more around the Central Valley, we'll probably see him a little bit more often, ironically enough. So, but this also then poses another question. So not only, did we ask if Derek Carr is a Hall of Famer, but what should the Saints do at quarterback? They just drafted in the second round, Tyler Show, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's the quarterback that I think was the oldest in the draft, if I'm not mistaken. And if anything, the Saints put a lot of question marks on that pick just because they passed up on quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, Dylan Gabriel. Like they passed up some other good quality quarterbacks for someone who's older, but, by what experts would say is probably the most pro ready. So I don't know, maybe they're looking for a guy that could just plug and play. Kellen Moore as a rookie head coach coming in with the Saints. He's going to work with Show and see how it goes. They still also have Spencer Rattler on the roster as well. I don't remember. I think they also have Jake Hayner from former Fresno State Bulldogs still on the team. So I don't know how much Hayner is in the mix in this as well, but that quarterback room is looking a little thin. So then a question that I've seen, and I'm throwing it out to the audience now, is should Aaron Rodgers maybe be considered as the quarterback fill-in for the New Orleans Saints? I think in a weak division in the NFC North, maybe it's a question because really there's one team that we can pose that is probably going to run away with this division with very little resistance, and that would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But then you have the Atlanta Falcons. Like, what do they look like now? Are they going to bring back, which they probably won't, but if they do bring back Kirk Cousins, or are they going to flip Kirk Cousins to another team and now then start Michael Penix? Are they a playoff team with how they're constructed and how their defense looks? Carolina Panthers have they done enough to where they can take a little bit of a leap forward to where they're not a bottom team anymore? So I think that's another big question. But, again, with the state of how the Saints are, if the Saints were to roll out as they are as a team now, they probably would be dead last in this division, in a weak division nonetheless. So that says a lot about how this team is. So, should Aaron Rodgers be signed with the New Orleans Saints? Aaron Rodgers has also kind of been tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers recently this offseason. They notably did not draft a quarterback in this, or actually, no, I'm sorry, they did. They drafted Will Howard. So they're also in another predicament. But I think with the New Orleans Saints, it's staying in the NFC. Does this interest Aaron Rodgers? Because, again, who knows what he wants to do? Still contemplating whether or not he wants to play. He feels no pressure to rush. So who knows? But, if I'm the Saints, I mean, depending on how competitive you want to be in the NFC immediate, maybe you would bring on Aaron Rodgers. But, Kellen Moore is a rookie head coach. I think this is one of those years where you can have a bad season and, learn from it. And we'll see how you really are as a coach with, the cards you're dealt with, and then judge you based on that. But you put in Aaron Rodgers, like maybe that's attention that you don't want. So it's the only other reason why I can think why Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be a great fit for New Orleans. But, if you're looking for like a Band-Aid solution to get fans excited, New Orleans and Aaron Rodgers might be an interesting destination. But if I'm New Orleans, I'd probably just roll with what you got. I mean, it can't get any worse than this. So, and then Also, a couple of other pieces of NFL news before we move on. So the Dallas Cowboys have acquired wide receiver George Pickens from Pittsburgh Steelers, who we just talked about, for a 2026 third-round pick. This is very interesting. So I posed a couple of questions. Does this trade help the Cowboys as a top contender in the NFC? Couple of things. One, I don't think the Cowboys are a top contender in the NFC, even with George Pickens. I think the reason why is because they are in a very difficult division in the NFC East. I don't even know if they are better than the Commanders. I know the Commanders are young. I know that the Commanders surprised a lot of people last year, but Dan Quinn as a head coach, I trust a little bit more than Brian Schottenheimer, who is a first-time head coach. And also, we are not going to be naive to think that the Cowboys are anywhere near the Philadelphia Eagles. No offense to the Cowboys or any Cowboys fans. And I'm talking to you, Michael, who is a big Cowboys fan, who's a friend of the program. But I don't think the Cowboys are on the level of the Eagles. And the Eagles are clear runaways number one in this division. The Commanders, I think, are a good second. However, it just depends. Is that defense good enough to make stops when needed? The offense, and I know that they've also added some pieces through the draft and Deebo Samuel in the offseason with a trade with 49ers. I think also they acquired Larry Tunsil, so they're shoring up the offensive line as well. So to me, the Commanders would be, number two in this division who would probably be able to rival the Eagles. But the Cowboys, at best, tied for third in this division, because some would argue, and I don't know if I'm in this camp quite yet because I just need to see what they look like, but some would say that the New York Giants, with the way that they had their draft and free agency, that maybe they are better than the Cowboys. And if that's the case, that means the Cowboys are dead last in this NFC East division. Now, I don't know if I'm going to say that the Giants are better than the Cowboys right now. I think I need to wait to see how the Giants even look getting on the field, because they looked like a very bad team this past season, which, again, another friend of the program, Jason Colenso, host of Three from Deep, he would also probably tell you the same thing about the Giants. But with the Giants drafting Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, a couple of other players along the way as well, and having Malik Neighbors, who was a rookie sensation last year, and that was with no quarterbacks, essentially. Giants have also signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston to the roster, so who knows if they'll both make it, but just having those two guys on the roster to help, be mentors or teammates to Jackson Dart for his development, and even if they don't go to Dart immediately, either one of them starting with that team and that offensive line, who knows how good the Giants would be. So again, going back to my original question is, does this make the Cowboys contenders in the NFC? I don't know. I don't even know how good the Cowboys are before this trade. I mean, offensively, maybe they are better because, CeeDee Lamb needed an opposite to him. And now you got George Pickens, who is a very talented receiver. Absolutely no doubt about that. But, Jerry Jones and this front office and Brian Schottenheimer, you want to talk about a real test of how you are in terms of a culture and your leadership. You're going to really throw George Pickens in there, and no shot to George Pickens in terms of character or anything like that. But at least what we've seen on the field with his outbursts, his behavior, to, Pittsburgh Steelers, it was not great. Mike Tomlin, who is known to be a player's coach, who has been with the Steelers organization, I think now for 18 seasons, a coach who notably had Antonio Brown on the team, was pretty much ready to deal George Pickens, and the Steelers getting a third round pick for Pickens is a kind of a big deal in return. Like a day 2 draft pick is pretty huge for George Pickens. Like, the Cowboys really believe that they are able to manage George Pickens. Now, maybe George Pickens does clean up his act for one season to prove that he deserves a contract, and that's on the Cowboys that they want to do that. And maybe they're really going to try to really milk this 1-year rental, prove it kind of a situation out of George Pickens to see if he can make a difference in that, on that team, on the field. But do I trust Brian Schottenheimer on dealing with him? Not really. Then we have Jerry Jones, who is known to say, his opinion about his team, players in the media during the offseason, during the regular season. So, I think this is more of a question. Can the Cowboys keep George Pickens in line? I'm not confident that they can, because the Cowboys love headlines. They kind of, well, at least Jerry Jones, I'll say Jerry Jones welcomes that kind of attention and that drama that comes into the locker room. And at least when you had Mike McCarthy, he was able to kind of keep things in the locker room and, was able to produce on the field. It's unfortunate that the one season that, Mike McCarthy didn't have great success, a lot of it was not really his fault. A lot of it was injuries, you can argue, and he just wasn't able to come back, but also dealt with Jerry and his outbursts in the media. So, again, do I think an organization like that could handle a player like George Pickens? I don't know. And that's, I think, what makes me apprehensive is if we're going to just eliminate the other factors, George Pickens definitely makes the Cowboys a better team. Contenders, I don't know. But with all the other outside factors, it's a really high risk, high reward type of move for the Cowboys. So we'll see. And, again, no, George Pickens is not any scrub of a player. Even just 2 seasons ago in 2023, he had a 1,000-yard season, 5 touchdowns. In only 3 seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's accumulated 12 touchdowns. So he's able to get in the end zone. He's able to catch a lot of passes, but this is also with stats of like not really having a quarterback behind him that is able to really give him the ball. Even with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, George Pickens still felt like he was a difference maker, but just needed a quarterback. And now you got Dak Prescott, and defenses are going to have to not only worry about CeeDee Lamb, but now also George Pickens. You might see coverages a little differently, and maybe this is the resurgence that George Pickens needs. So, and then the last bit of NFL news, and this is kind of a teaser for later on this week, but we have the NFL schedule coming out as I'm recording this tonight on a Tuesday, the 13th. It'll come out Wednesday on the 14th. So I will be doing an episode on the 15th. So that's Thursday, to kind of go over the NFL schedule and maybe pick out some games that I'm very interested in. There's a mysterious one that is supposed to take place in Brazil with the Chargers. I have a sneaky feeling that is my Raiders and the Chargers that are going to play. So if I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments that it's not what happened. I'm sure I'm going to find out in the morning when I wake up from post recording this episode. So, but some notable games that have been teased already by the NFL is Broncos and Chiefs are going to be on Christmas Day, which will be very interesting. And for those that were paying attention to the AFC Roundtable when this was live streamed on the Drew Code channel and also Shovik Sports and Answer the Calls podcast channel, the Shovik brothers, Austin and Corey, are Broncos and Chiefs fans. So that's going to be a very interesting Christmas Day for them. And I think one of the things that's very interesting is I had the Chargers being one of the teams in the AFC that's probably most ready to take on the Chiefs and potentially take over the division. But a lot of people are saying that the Broncos are right there because of their defense. And a lot of people are putting stock in that defense that's going to neutralize Patrick Mahomes, and assuming that Bo Nix in his second year can really lead this football team and maybe beat the Chiefs. I don't know about that, but this is a very interesting game that's going to take place Christmas Day. So we'll see how everyone is health-wise up to this point or how the season rolls out. But I think that's a very interesting game. And then, of course, the week 1 kickoff game, which is going to be on a Thursday night football, is Cowboys, which is the team we just talked about, and the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the defending Super Bowl champions. So that'll be a very interesting week 1 game. If we really want to see how this team looks in terms of the Cowboys week 1 going up against their division rivals and Super Bowl champions, is a good test to see where they're at. This is in Philadelphia, so that'll be a fun game. And then a couple of other ones that we saw was the international slate. So we saw Chargers on there. We saw Pittsburgh on there a couple of times. Jaguars were on there a few times as well. Miami, I think, is in there on one game. So we will have a full slate of the schedule tomorrow, which will come out as this episode comes out tomorrow as well. And then, like I said, later on this week, probably on Thursday the 15th, I will be diving into a couple of the games. And throughout this offseason, before the regular season, I will be doing what Drew and I normally do, which is we go through each division and predict each team's record based on the division. So 1 week we'll go through the North region. We'll talk about AFC and NFC. Then we'll work our way to the South, East, and West. And along the way, I will actually have guests that come on that their favorite team is represented within that division. And then we'll all do it per division. And I think that'll be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. And you'll be seeing that coming through social media. And also any of the podcast friends that are listening, be on deck. Who knows who I might text or message to see if you want to talk about your team on the channel as well. So that's a little NFL preview for the schedule that is going to come out tomorrow. And again, rounding out that conversation with the Cowboys. I didn't finish that Cowboys conversation because the last half of that question is, with the Steelers trading away George Pickens, was that a smart move? I think long-term it's probably a smart move, but for the intermediate, like not having a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 1 opposite of DK Metcalf, who you just traded for, I don't know if it's a smart move. You might want to look at free agency to see what you can do to bolster it. Maybe Amari Cooper makes sense here. Keenan Allen is still available on waivers. Maybe you add him because he is a route technician, and he'd actually be a really good receiver to have for Mason Rudolph if that's the quarterback you're going to throw out there, or Will Howard, the rookie that they drafted. If you want him to have like a security blanket, that's an option as well. The Steelers did also draft Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, the running back, who I think was a really good pick. So we'll see what the Steelers do. I mean, they've gone into other off seasons with a mediocre offense and again have been over 500. So Mike Tomlin will definitely will have to prove again this season why he is constantly the best coach in the NFL, just because he takes a subpar roster and makes it work. I think what makes this difficult is, though, the division he's in outside of the Browns. This is extremely competitive, and he's got a lot of work to do. And really getting rid of essentially your best wide receiver option is a hard start to the offseason. But again, there's still a lot of it to go, and we'll see how the rest of it plays out. So that is the end of the first half of the episode of the NFL. We're going to move on to the NBA. But before we move on to the NBA, you guys, don't forget that if you guys want a discount on any of your concert sporting events, you're going to want to visit SeatGeek.com. Use the promo code DrewCode to get $20 off your first order. The discount code and the link is going to be in the description below, so don't forget to do that. And Drew Code Sports Talk is powered by StreamYard. If you guys want to start your podcast journey, go to the link as well. There is a link to where you guys can get a credit when you guys start your own StreamYard account to begin your podcast journey. So don't forget to do all that. Thank you to StreamYard and SeatGeek for being supporters of the show. So now we're going to get into the playoffs, and this is probably the most interesting NBA playoffs that has taken place to date. A lot of developments, a lot of surprises, to be honest, as well. So to start off with, one of those surprises is the New York Knicks, who probably came into the series against the Boston Celtics as underdogs, are currently up 3-1 right now. And I believe they're heading to Boston right now, where there's an opportunity for the Knicks to close out the series in Boston. They would essentially gentlemen sweep the Celtics and win in 5 games. However, in game 4, there was an unfortunate injury that took place. Jayson Tatum tore his Achilles on Monday night. It happened at the 2-minute and 58-second mark of the fourth quarter. I don't know what the score was. I wish I would put that in my notes, but I do know that this game was pretty close when he went down with his injury. And watching the rest of the game, you can tell that the Boston Celtics were a little dejected, had no additional energy. It looks like the life was sucked right out of them. And a lot of it was because, you know, say what you want about Jayson Tatum, whether he's not a top 10 player, not a top 5 player, whether, you know, you don't want him to be the face of the NBA or whatever the case may be. But what you can't deny is Jayson Tatum's talent, and whether he's the 1 or the 2, the 2A, the 1B, whatever, he is one of the engines of the Boston Celtics that has helped them be so relevant the last, 8 seasons that he's been on the team, you know, right next to Jaylen Brown, to where they've gone to semifinals together, conference championships together, won the NBA title last year against, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Denver Nuggets. Also, you know, they've been there once before against the believe it was Golden State Warriors, but the Warriors beat them in that series. So, Boston with Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been a very, very good team. So it's very unfortunate to see Jayson Tatum go out with such an injury. And it's not just a injury, it's the Achilles injury. It's a very difficult injury to come back from. Kevin Durant is probably the most recent player that has done it in the NBA. And that even then was like 5 seasons ago. It took him, if I'm not mistaken, 18 months to return. And he still looks like KD now. Obviously, KD's slightly older. Jayson Tatum's only 27. So the recovery may not be 18 months, but still, like, Jayson Tatum's game is going to look a lot different. And we're going to wish Jayson Tatum a speedy recovery because, again, say what you want about Jayson Tatum not being the face of the league or him not being a true number one. He's definitely a player that is going to be missed. His impact on the court is just further than what people realize. Just even in this past regular season, he was 26.8 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 45% from the field. And just in this postseason, so 8 games in the postseason that he played, he was averaging 28 points, 11.5 rebounds. So he was averaging a double-double and shooting just below 38% from 3. Now, granted, a lot of that kind of percentage dropped off a little bit from, if I'm not mistaken, it was game 3 or game 1 and 2 where the Celtics didn't shoot very well from 3. Game 3, they came out on fire. But Jayson Tatum in the last few postseasons, even last year, helping them get to a championship, 25 points, 6 assists, 9 rebounds, shooting 87% from the free throw line and a 43%. Now, granted, Jaylen Brown was the MVP of that finals, but Jayson Tatum was a huge reason why the Celtics had the success that they did. So it's very unfortunate that Jayson Tatum is essentially going to be out for the foreseeable future because of this devastating injury. So, with Tatum being out, can the Celtics rally and can they survive? I think what's difficult is I think the Celtics are going to be very dejected and very defeated by Tatum being out. I think that they're going to have some early spurts of rallies and getting on runs that will have maybe a decent lead in Boston to give excitement in game 5. But I think ultimately the Knicks have the momentum. Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, they have found their rhythm. Even Cat has looked a little bit more aggressive. They have found a rhythm and a confidence that they do believe that they can beat the Boston Celtics. And, even in game 4, before Jayson Tatum went out, the New York Knicks were really pushing a run to where it looked like they were going to take over. So even if Tatum didn't go out with an injury, there was a good chance or a good argument you can make that the Knicks still would have won that game, again, in New York, because they had the momentum heading into their direction, and then go to Boston, and maybe Boston then pushes it to a game 6. But still, there was a pretty high probability that the Knicks still would have won that game without Tatum, or without Tatum. Now, with the Knicks having a 3-1 game lead, maybe they give Boston an extra life. And, I'm not saying the Knicks are going to waive, the game, but maybe they just let Boston have their moment, go back to New York, close it out in 6, and then, again, prepare for the Indiana Pacers, who are going to meet them in the who might meet them in the conference finals. Now, again, the Knicks have not secured anything. They still have to win the next game. If they don't win game 5, of course, Boston can push it to a 6. Crazier things have happened. Teams have come back from a 3-1 deficit. It's not now something that's never happened. It has happened before. So we will see what the Knicks do. But for all intents and purposes, I think the Boston Celtics are essentially done. The Knicks just need to take care of business and respect the Celtics and put them away. Don't take them for granted because, Celtics are still a good team. Jaylen Brown was on this team before Jayson Tatum. As constructed, I think maybe they're a middle-of-the-pack playoff team, but not defending champions, I don't think. And then another question is, should the Boston Celtics break up this core now that you have Jayson Tatum, who is going to be out for a long time? And you've got players like Al Horford, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Devin White, Pritchard. You've got a handful of role players that you need to figure out what you want to do with. And I think knowing that Jayson Tatum is going to be out for at least a season, maybe a season and a half, depending on rehab and how his recovery goes and all that, you probably will move off of Al Horford, who's the oldest on the team. You probably will trade away Drew Holiday because, again, his championship pedigree could probably still get you some assets. And there might be a probability where the Boston Celtics are just a okay team to where they are going to do their best to get through the season as they are, without, Jayson Tatum. I did see something asking, should Boston trade for Giannis? I don't think the Bucks will ever do that. If the Bucks do a deal with somebody in the East, it's going to be with a team that really is not a competitive team in the East. Truthfully, more likely that team that acquires Giannis is going to be in the West. I highly doubt the Milwaukee Bucks are going to want to deal with anybody that's in the East unless Giannis says so, which I'll talk about in a couple of segments. But, do I think Boston should probably dismantle their core? I do. And a lot of it has to do with, you got Jaylen Brown, who's on a $300 million contract. Jayson Tatum's, I think, on a similar number, if not slightly more. Al Horford's getting expensive. Drew Holiday's getting expensive. I don't know if you want to keep Jaylen Brown, or maybe the Celtics look to shop Jaylen Brown just because he would get you the most assets right now. You pair that with Drew Holiday to a team that's looking to get off of, some expiring contracts, maybe who's on the playoff bubble, who could use some playoff and championship experience. Maybe that's something that, could be looked at. But for now, I think Boston, as we know it, as this core, is probably done. Now, there's a world where, of course, and it's very, very possible, that Boston just keeps Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, and then they build around that, which is possible. But both Brown and Tatum are getting older, so what that window looks like, who knows? So, but it's very unfortunate with the injury with Jayson Tatum. It just changes this team's trajectory by a lot. And, we'll see, does Boston call up the Dallas Mavericks and say, hey, do you want Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday and a couple of picks for the number 1 overall pick? And, and then Boston goes and gets Cooper Flagg. I don't know. Okay, moving on to, ironically enough, again, the Indiana Pacers we just talked about, they eliminated the Cleveland Cavaliers. That was tonight as I'm recording this on Tuesday. I would say that, the Pacers were definitely looked at as underdogs coming into it. I think to start the postseason, they were, I think, the 4th seed, if I'm not mistaken. So, or maybe they were the 3rd seed. I can't remember. Anyways, but Pacers coming in here and essentially eliminating the number 1 team in the East, which is a very shocking thing. I think the Cavaliers dealt with a combination of things of just, they just didn't have any life in them after games 1 and 2, the way that they lost. Now, it doesn't help that they started the series injured. They didn't have a couple of their main guys. Darius Garland comes to mind, DeAndre Hunter. They were both out for, I think, the first 2 games. So gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Devin Mitchell. Devin? No, that's not how you pronounce it. Donovan. Wow, what in the world? Donovan Mitchell. Wow, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Donovan Mitchell, of course, was having to play Superman for game 1, 2, and most of 3, to where they had to, he had to really put this team on his back as he done before. And game 3, I think, was the game that, the Cavs were able to get one and look like that they were going to be the number 1 team. But, again, game 4 and 5, you had the Pacers that just, they just wouldn't go away. They had a really good defense. They were able to outscore the Cavaliers. And what's surprising is the Cavaliers came in as arguably the best shooting team in the league and even had some great showdowns with the Thunder. And clearly the Cavaliers were the better of the shooting of the teams to shoot the ball. And Cavaliers just weren't able to get on any sort of roll. Kind of unfortunate because, as I had said, and I didn't mean to be a prophet about this, but I had said this on Jason Colenso's podcast, 3 from Deep, when we were kind of talking about, teams in the East, and, we were talking about the Thunder and the Cavaliers, and I'd said I think the Cavaliers are a team that needs to be put on notice as a team that they're a really fun regular season team. They are dominant. They won 64 games, and, Kenny Atkinson won Coach of the Year because of that. But, they're a prime team in my example that they're probably going to get eliminated in the playoffs. They will not get to the NBA Finals. I just don't see it. And it's not that I just don't believe in their shooting or their playing ability. It's just, it's been a while since I've seen the number one team in the NBA or the hottest shooting team that kind of takes over the league. It's been a long time since I've seen a team like that really go to the NBA Finals and win. So just it didn't seem like the Cavaliers were a team that were going to go to the championship. I didn't see it. I didn't think so. I thought the Thunder were more likely to do it, but I still don't even know if they're going to get all the way to the NBA Finals themselves. But I was saying that the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're a good regular season team, and they're definitely a playoff team, but I don't know if they're a championship caliber team. And I think the Pacers, the way that they played with sharing the ball, Tyrese Halliburton, even though his shot is what it is, he's still able to put it in the basket, can take you off the dribble, extremely good court vision, and Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner, all those guys being contributors. And it doesn't feel like that they have one guy that's going to score the ball all the time. It's just they beat you by a collection of talent, which is phenomenal. So Pacers move on. They gentlemen sweep the number one team in the East and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And now the Indiana Pacers wait to see who is the winner between the Knicks and the Boston Celtics. Right now it is, obviously it's the Knicks leading 3-1. So we will see after, I think it's Wednesday night, the Knicks play. So we'll see how that shapes out. And then a couple more, the game between the Thunder and the Nuggets just went final. So now the Thunder have a 3-2 lead I believe they're going to be heading to Denver for game 6. And if there is a game 7, it'll go back to Oklahoma City. But, one of the questions I posed here regarding the Thunder and the Nuggets is the winner of this series, will they be the team that goes all the way to the NBA Finals for the West? And I would ultimately say no. And it's going to lead into my next series that I'll talk about, being the Timberwolves. I think the Thunder have the best chance to close out the series against the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets had a tough series in round 1 against the LA Clippers, obviously pushed them to 7 games, and Jokic having to go up against Zubac, which was a very physical matchup. And honestly, I still thought the Clippers should have won that series, but James Harden just kind of went absent. But nevertheless, Denver Nuggets won. They're now pushing the number one team in the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder, to a potential, I'm sure the Nuggets are hoping to push them to a game 7 to give them an opportunity. And as everyone remembers, they fired Mike Malone with, I think it was 3 games left to go in the regular season heading into the playoffs, and the Nuggets still found success and wound up in the second round. But I think ultimately, don't get me wrong, I think, if the Thunder win this series, it definitely shows that maybe Shea is the MVP of the regular season, even though I'm certain that they make this determination of who the MVP during the postseason once they see all the playoff teams play. But the Thunder, as good as they are, I also think that has something to do with a little bit of inexperience. I don't know if the Thunder are ready. They might be. I mean, they've got Alex Caruso on there, who's probably their only veteran with some sort of playoff or championship experience. But I don't know if that's enough for Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, or Shea Gilgeous. I think if they go up against a team like the Timberwolves, who I'll talk about in a moment, I think it'll be a very physical battle. And I don't know if the Thunder are going to be able to match that level of physicality. And I don't know if the Thunder are as experienced as the Timberwolves to get past it. And, again, that'll kind of lead me over to talking about now the Timberwolves and the Warriors. Cause, again, the Warriors won't have Steph Curry for game 5. I think the soonest they might have Steph Curry is game 6, even if hypothetically they rushed him back for game 5 or 6. Steph Curry runs the possibility of re-aggravating his hamstring injury or making it worse, which then would derail the rest of his career and however long that is left, because I think he just turned 37 or 38 this year. And so, of course, the Timberwolves are up 3-1. Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, really the Golden State Warriors, who had this problem earlier this year, which is Steph Curry was really the only guy that they had, really no other superstar. They acquired Jimmy Butler, and now all of a sudden this team was able to kind of get on a rhythm and look very, very formidable. And now with no Steph Curry and only Jimmy Butler, again, the Golden State Warriors are kind of right back to square one, which is, again, you've got Jimmy Butler. He's not even an outside shooting of a threat. He can, in some occasions, he can create for others, but he's not nearly a Steph Curry level player who not only can he create for others, but he can create his own shot. He can get hot from beyond 3-point line, and, he can keep you in games with his shot. Jimmy Butler is not that kind of a player. Don't get me wrong. He has put the Miami Heat on his back before, but I think what makes it difficult is you got the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are matching what Jimmy Butler's physicality normally is and what Draymond Green's physicality normally is. And Golden State Warriors aren't as tall, and nor are they able to match physicality with the shooting of the Timberwolves. Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, the other Mike Conley, the other players that they have, they just shoot the ball better from range, from mid-range. They're more physical. So I just don't think the Warriors can match up to that. So I would predict that the Timberwolves are going to move on, because, again, they are also up 3-1. So I think that they're going to close out the Warriors, which means in the West, we would have the Timberwolves versus the Thunder, if the Thunder do close it out against the Denver Nuggets. And I ultimately think the Timberwolves would be the better of the two teams, just because I think Anthony Edwards is a phenomenal player. Him going head-to-head against Shai Gilgeous, I think, would be a very fun series to watch. And I think these teams match up very well, but I just think with how the playoffs are, I don't think the Thunder are ready for the type of physicality that the Timberwolves can unleash, if I'm being honest. So then rounding out two questions left regarding the NBA conversation before I close out the episode. One is Giannis has come out. Shams has reported that Giannis is now open to the idea of being traded from Milwaukee, and, who are the best landing spots. I've heard everything from Giannis going to the Rockets to San Antonio being paired with Victor Wembanyama, which would be a very interesting pairing. I've seen also Giannis being connected to Golden State, which interesting. And I'm trying to remember, there's another team I've thought was thrown out there. The Oklahoma City Thunder, I think, was another team tied to it. So I think what's difficult is you got to find a team who's willing to pull the trigger and get rid of a bunch of draft picks, take on a large contract in Giannis, and your team is going to look a lot different. You're probably going to lose a lot of your young core. You're probably going to lose a lot of players that, you're hoping to build around and stay under, the salary cap, which has the first and second apron and all that stuff behind it. So, what team makes the most sense? I mean, it depends what team is the most desperate. Like, could Phoenix facilitate a trade? They have no assets, so probably not. Could the Lakers do it? They would probably look decimated. And honestly, I don't know what the Lakers would look like with LeBron James, Giannis, and Luka. I think if this was 3-on-3 basketball, that'd be great. That, who's stopping us? But this is a team basketball thing. Luka and LeBron, they had an interesting time trying to figure out who's going to be ball dominant and take over. You have Giannis, who is, not necessarily go down to the block and, really post up kind of a guy. He's also kind of ball dominant, where he also likes to create. So it just creates, an interesting scenario of what teams would acquire him. If he stays in the East, can a team like Brooklyn trade for him? What would they give up and how would they look? Will Chicago do it? Will Atlanta do it? I don't know. Miami makes a little bit of sense if they're willing to part ways with some assets and, That might look like trading away Bam Adebayo, but keeping Tyler Hero. If you are able to keep Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, how depleted is their future assets and how likely are they to go get a championship? Let's say Giannis wants to go to the New York Knicks. I think that's a pretty good destination for Giannis, but that would mean you're giving up maybe a Mitchell Robertson. Maybe you include Cat in that deal. Maybe you include, I don't know what other player you would include, but you don't have draft capital any longer because you did that for Mikal Bridges. So maybe that's not the best destination. LA Clippers might be a team that is able to facilitate it. Houston probably makes the most sense. So they'd have to include like a Jalen Green, Jabari Smith in that deal. But, if Golden State is able to find some assets, maybe because that would help their superstar problem, especially if they can keep Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry and add Giannis, maybe that makes the Warriors a very dangerous team. But there's a lot of interesting dynamics with Giannis and his contract and what team could add him, and with draft picks being very valuable, it seems like nowadays, what is the likelihood? I mean, if San Antonio were to facilitate a trade where they added Giannis and Victor and we're able to keep Castle, who was the recent rookie of the year, and also De'Aaron Fox, like that would be a dangerous team, a very tall team. But how would that look like with spacing and shooting? So that would be a very interesting. And with the Spurs having 2 first-round picks, maybe the number 2 overall pick is able to entice the Milwaukee Bucks. Who knows? But Giannis has been reported open to that. And then lastly, we have the Dallas Mavericks, who were winners of the NBA draft lottery Monday night and were awarded the number 1 pick and essentially are going to draft Cooper Flagg, who has essentially been on everyone's radar since he was on Team USA, went to Duke, played at Duke, and looked really good as a freshman. And now, obviously, the Dallas Mavericks are almost guaranteed to draft him, and he'll be on the team. So now with a healthy AD, assuming Kyrie Irving comes back healthy, Klay Thompson comes back, and Daniel Gafford, and you add Cooper Flagg to that team, this team could be a legit team in the West if they can stay healthy, which is very, very interesting. And I've seen obviously several things coming around if the NBA lottery is rigged, which I saw a video on TikTok today that basically completely negated that claim. And essentially was saying that there is somebody that's in a room, back is to even the thing that pulls out, the ping pong balls to see who is awarded that pick. And there's just so many variables that go into how it is impossible to cheat the draft and all that stuff. So the fact that the Mavericks had a 1.8% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick and they ended up getting it just goes to show it's all about luck, and it has nothing to do with having a rigged system. Because if anything, like, why didn't Cooper Flagg go to like a bigger market than well, I mean, Dallas is a decent market, but out of all the teams, why Dallas? Why not San Antonio, who got I think it was the 2nd pick overall? Why not Charlotte? He would have stayed near North Carolina, and Charlotte could use a superstar to go alongside LaMelo Ball and Brad Miller. So, why would he do that? So there's just a lot of conspiracies that the NBA draft is rigged, which I don't think so. But I also see another side of it where a lot of people are saying Nico Harris cooked, or Nico Harris knew something, or whatever. And I just want to remind everybody, Nico Harris didn't do anything other than he traded Luka, kind of showed that he was not a very good GM. And let's be honest, if you had the opportunity to pick Luka to start your franchise at 26, or Cooper Flagg, granted Cooper Flagg's like 21 maybe, who would you pick? And knowing all the information that you know today, you probably would still go with Luka, just because you're going to get a guy that's almost averaging 30 a night, can average almost a triple-double if he wanted to, but is, Luka's getting about 38 and 8, and you can rely on that every night. You go to the NBA finals at least once, conference finals twice, knowing all that information, you probably still would go with Luka. And why? Because Cooper Flagg, yeah, he's coming out as a freshman. He's promising, but you don't know what his career is going to be. And I would say Nico Harris is no more than just he's an employee on the Dallas Mavericks. I got lucky that they got the number 1 pick because, sure, if Dallas didn't trade Luka, there may be a playoff team, so they don't even have the opportunity to go and get a 1% chance to get, in the lottery. Fair. But at the same time, I'm sure that you would much rather have a young player like Luka, who is an international superstar, on the team to build around, and again has gotten to the finals with Luka, rather than taking a shot on a 21-year-old that you hope he'll be ready in a season or two to take the lead or be the face of the franchise. You hope, Nico Harris is the guy that put the Dallas Mavericks in this situation. He's not cooking or anything. If anything, he's the reason why they got in this position, not because he's a fortune teller, because he, again, to his own words, made the trade because they were in a win now and they believe defense wins championship. He didn't foresee that AD was going to get injured and they were going to have a catastrophic fall off from being a top 4 team to being out of the play-in looking in. Or, yeah, they didn't even make the play-in. So Nico Harrison didn't do anything other than put the Mavericks in this situation. So to assume that Nico had anything to do with what happened, no. He still traded the franchise, and maybe Dallas should be worried that he's going to trade Cooper if Cooper Flagg doesn't turn out to be a player that Nico assumes he should be also. Maybe that's another question or another conversation for another day. So anyways, guys, that is it for me for Drew Code Sports Talk. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Again, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like and share the episode. Also, if you guys are listening to us on the audio side of iHeart, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, leave a comment, leave a review. Would love to hear from you guys. Please also follow us there so that way you get up to date of all of our latest episodes. And again, there's a lot of fun stuff coming around the corner, so follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook for all the up-to-date stuff that, we'll be doing with other podcasters, with other sports content creators throughout this offseason and also the start of the regular season. It is going to be a fun ride leading up into it. So stay tuned for that. So for me, I'm signing off, you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will catch you guys on the next episode. And don't forget, be kind to one another, and I will see you guys